Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another movie review with my two good buddies, Btwixt and Blackbird9. And this particular movie review is one I think a lot of people will be familiar with because it's certainly a cult classic among the conspiracy-minded people. It's a film I came across back around 2010, and it made a pretty serious impact on me when I watched it first. But and it's a good one to be doing. And although a lot of people might know it, I think it's good that we do a review on it anyway. And it is, of course, They Live, 1998 American type science fiction type horror type film, written and directed by John Carpenter, well-known Hollywood producer. And based on a 1963 short story, 8 o'clock in the Morning by Ray Nelson. Stars Roddy Piper, Keith David, and Meg Foster. And I suppose it basically, the movie's about a guy, he's a drifter, he's gone from town to town looking for work. You can tell from the beginning it's a kind of a slow start, but he arrives in Los Angeles, he's got his backpack on his back, and he's just looking for work. And there's a kind of it looks kind of normal in LA, but there's a kind of an undercurrent there which you can feel. And so he comes into the downtown area, sees a preacher pretty much saying about the end of the world, where we're going, and the government is watching you, and they're controlling us, and they're stealing us out of our energy, and it's evil times we're living in. Of course, he ignores that, and then he goes to a kind of a employment center looking for work. No work there, and he eventually gets a job on a construction site. Meets up with his buddy Frank, who's a black guy played by Keith David. And anyway, without just to give people a brief synopsis of it, the two of them eventually discover how this world is run and who is running it, all thanks to a pair of black sunglasses, which is I think the main star of the show here. But yeah, a very interesting film, and a very appropriate again to what we're going through now, and particularly again that this was from 1988. The film didn't do too well at the beginning. It did okay, but it kind of it didn't get great reviews, and it was kind of forgotten about. But certainly in the last 15 years or so, it has really picked up, and there's a lot of memes you'll see online regarding the They Live, the particular scenes that we will go through. You will a lot of people will see these memes that are put up everywhere, particularly regarding when Roddy Piper's taking off and putting on the sunglasses. But anyway, we'll get into it all, and we'll start first of all. Say hello to Btwixt. How are you doing, sir?
I'm grand.
Good.
And thanks for presenting this, Brizer, and thanks also to Blackbird for coming on, and he'll be offering his 2 pennies. Yeah, I saw this only right through 2 weeks ago, and you mentioned it to me. I think Blackbird was interested in reviewing this film as well, and I'd only seen memes of it. The meme where Roddy Piper takes off the sunglasses and he sees some advertising, and then he puts on the sunglasses, and it's something completely different. And that's more or less my reference to the film, well, until 2 weeks ago. And when I watched it, I was thinking, is that Roddy Piper, the wrestler? And indeed it was him who starred in it. And I just read up a bit. He was of Scottish descent. He died a few years ago, but he was born in Canada. And when he was little, I think he went to Edinburgh, and he wanted, I think he saw bagpipes, and he asked his parents, could he get bagpipes? He'd like to learn how to play the bagpipes. So he was able to play the bagpipes, whether well or not, I don't know. But yeah, this film anyway is definitely worth watching. I think the first half of it is the enjoyable part. I think it gets a bit tedious in the second half, but it's definitely worth viewing.
Yeah. Okay, and then pass over to Blackbird. How are you doing, sir? And your initial thoughts, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of it.
Greetings. Thank you so much for having me back. Yeah, it was really interesting that I had so many people after hearing our other reviews on like Eyes Wide Shut, et cetera, and Wag the Dog. Also people start making requests of movies they want us to review. So I was like, okay. And this was one I got from several people that you guys need to do a review on They Live by John Carpenter. And I was like, okay, yeah, lots of stuff going on in that. And as a disclaimer, I kind of, I'm hit and miss with John Carpenter's work, to be honest with you. I was never really one into his slasher films like Halloween, etc. But things like Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, and They Live, it's like, yeah, okay, those I can watch. Even They Live, I knew the violence was coming because I'd seen this film so many times before, but the person I was watching it with, they actually got bothered by it a little bit. It was just, because it was so over the top violent, that, they weren't real, enjoying it as much as, I was, I guess. So that's kind of a disclaimer. There is some violence in this film, and there, a little brief nudity and lots of strong language. And, of course, one of the classic fight scenes of all fight scenes. Jim Kirk in the Star Trek franchise has nothing on the fight scene that happens in this film. But what I find so fascinating, though, is how this came to be from the 1963, let's see here, get this right, make sure I got my facts right. Yeah, it's 1963 when Ray Nelson wrote his story, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I couldn't help noticing parallels between that storyline and the 1967 series by Quinn Martin known as The Invaders, that was created by Larry Cohen and made it through 2 seasons on ABC television here in the United States from 67 to 68. And it's about a guy, David Vincent, who, stumbles on the fact that we have been invaded by aliens, and he's trying to expose it. So I see, this big parallel between the plot development in The Invaders and the plot development in They Live. And then in 86, this short story by Ray Nelson was put into graphic form in a science fiction fanzine, and that's where John Carpenter found it and decided to make the film. And so he found it in 86, and then in 88 he released the film. And it's a really low budget film. When you look at it, I think they did it for something like $3 million, and it ended up grossing like $13 million at the box office. But then it became a hit, just a cult classic that everybody has to see this film, right? And I guess the big takeaway, like we talked about in Eyes Wide Shut and Wag the Dog, is you see the power of the in-group. You've got a minority in-group that is informed. The aliens all know about each other, and then you have a majority that is completely clueless. And we talk about the werewolf game a lot, and the game theory behind the werewolf game, where you've got a minority that are working together against the uninformed majority, and they can basically take over the place. So this is like the werewolf game, all over, where you've got a minority of aliens that are very organized, very well funded, and have seized all the levers of power, and everybody's oblivious to them. But suddenly this guy becomes aware of them. So that's just kind of my initial takeaway of it. So back to you.
Yes, indeed. And a lot of kind of parallels with what we're actually seeing now. Again, I've seen this movie quite a few times. I'd say this is about my 5th time watching it. And it's like a lot of these movies, when you watch them again, you pick up on something that you didn't see the last time. And I always think that's quite interesting to notice things like that. Now, for me, like watching it, whenever I watched it the first time, it made a big impact on me, because it was around that time when I was kind of waking up to things, and I was looking into David Icke talking about reptilians and that type of thing. And even though that sounds a bit out there, after watching this, you kind of go, yeah, maybe he is onto something here. And when you look at all the people who are in so-called control at the moment, politicians, the corporate leaders, the likes of, the George Soros types, the Bill Gates types and everything, they're like soulless creatures. There's nothing in there. There's nothing human about them. There's no empathy. There's nothing. They're just callous, evil type people, and they're the people who are in charge right now. And in this film, that definitely shines through, So so to start off, okay, it's a kind of a slow start, but it's kind of needed. It's the character Roddy Piper, Rowdy Roddy Piper, the former wrestler. He's actually unnamed in this film, but I see his name is Nada, which I think is Spanish for nothing, if I'm correct. Would that be correct? Btwixt, you being in Spain there, Nada means nothing, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, nothing, yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought it was an interesting name. But so he arrives in LA anyway, and as I said, he's got his big backpack on his back, and he's obviously going from town to town looking for work. And he arrives in LA, and he's crossing these train tracks, and he walks into town, and as I said, there's the black preacher preaching about the end of the world, and we're being controlled, and they're watching us, and blah, all this type of stuff. And of course, he's not paying any attention. He's just in town. He wants to get some work and all that, and ends up going to this employment place, and it's full of people. And of course, as usual, there's no work. This tired old lady at the desk telling him, "No, there's nothing for you today." Blah blah blah. So off he goes. He ends up at a construction site, and he asks, "Is there any work available?" And they said, "Well, this is a union site." And he says, "Well, can I see the shop stewards then?" And so that was maybe the line to say, right, I'll say nothing if you say nothing, cash on hand type of job. So he was taken on, and his main companion in this, although they weren't really friendly at first, was Frank, and who's played by Keith David, Frank Armitage, and he notices Nada digging away. It's a new guy on the site, and he comes up to him and he says, first day here, whatever. So have you got a place to stay or anything? He obviously hasn't. I said, well, there's a kind of a tent city or shanty town, not on the outskirts a bit, and you'll get a place you can place to lay your head, and you get fed, and there's showers. So Nada agrees. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, well, he didn't say anything. He just kind of nods his head, and so he says, well, it's there anyway. So they're walking along anyway, and sorry, I'm getting mixed up here a bit. No, I'm back on it. Sorry. Frank is walking along, and Nada's following him behind, and he says, "I don't like people following me." He says, "Well, I'm following you. I need to know where you're going," and all this kind of thing. And so anyway, the two of them kind of don't get off to the best of starts. But he's glad to get to this site. As you can see, there's homelessness is a big problem in Los Angeles. We're obviously seeing that now big time. Tent cities all around the place, like shanty towns. But at least the people there seem to be nice people. They're looking out for each other. There's a kind of a soup kitchen there, or there's plenty of food there. And everyone seems to be helpful, and that's great. And two guys start chatting about where they're from and what all the rest of it. And Nada's saying, well, yeah, the world's a bit of a mess at the moment, but, I believe in the American dream and things will work out. While Frank is saying, well, he came down from Detroit. He's got a wife and kids up there, and he hasn't seen them in months, 6 or 7 months or something. And he's just keeping his head down just to make enough money and hopefully get out of there again and go back and see them. So the two of them are, they know that the world, it's not great, but they still have hopes that things will get better. And so as it develops, then it goes into the evening, and Nada notices there's a kind of a small church across the road from the shanty town, and there's singing and whatever going on there, gospel singing and whatever. And he notices one of the other guys in the camp is going in and out of there, so he thought, okay, what's going on there? And then he sees the black preacher also going in and out of there. So he goes over and has a look around, and he doesn't see very much. But then the black preacher comes in, but we find out that he's actually blind, and he catches Nada, and Nada says, "Oh, I stumbled in here by mistake, and I'll get out." And so he got out, but he knew that something fishy was going on in this church, but he couldn't figure it out just yet. So that's kind of the first initial stages of it before we kind of get into the kind of the good part of it. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Btwixt. Your take on that very first part of that whole scene. Coming into LA, everything kind of looks normal, but you feel that kind of nasty or an undercurrent. Cops around the place everywhere. Nobody talking to each other. It's a kind of hostile environment. So over to you.
Yeah, as you said, it's a very slow burner. And when you're watching this for the first time, you're wondering, okay, right, this guy is looking for a job. He seems to be homeless. And you said, Brizer, his name is John Nada. And you get the impression he's come with nothing. He comes from nowhere. He does mention when he goes to that job place that he worked in Denver, Colorado, but he doesn't actually mention, as far as I know, he doesn't mention what his job was. He just says that I think 14 banks closed down. That's all. So we don't even know what he was working at. And there is that undercurrent of unease, of paranoia. Frank, I would say he epitomizes that. He seems to be a guy who has the idea that once you keep your head down, you'll be all right, but don't ask any questions. And when he's being followed by John, he's not comfortable, and he wants to know, why are you following me? Even though he said to him minutes earlier that he would show him where you could get, some food and a place to rest. So yeah, there is that paranoia. Now, when Nada goes into that church, it's a very good scene actually, because from the outside it seems that there's a service going on, and curiosity gets the better of him, and he goes in, and it's just a tape recorder. It's actually a secret meeting of these rebels who, don't like the system, who feel that, well, I presume they already know that there's some other entity mixed in with human beings, and that they call the shots. But yeah, it's a secret meeting. The tape recorder, the choir, all that is just a smokescreen. And I think it's in the church on a board. I don't know if it's a poster or if it was written on a board, but it says something like, "They live, we sleep." And that really is the nuts and bolts of the film. While people are asleep, they don't know what's going on. Ignorance is bliss. There's another type of creature that is living off the labor and the sweat and the tears and the blood of humanity. And yeah, you mentioned Brizer. He says, "I believe in America." When I saw that there 2 weeks ago, I was thinking, when is the last time I watched a film? Because that was kind of a common theme in a lot of films in the 80s, probably going back a few decades. maybe even up until the 90s. But I never hear it these days. I believe in America. Yeah, so he also says to Frank before he starts noticing that things are a bit strange. He says to Frank, "If I follow the rules, things will work out." And when I watched that, I was thinking, how naive can you be? But at the same time, I think we were all naive at a certain time in the past. We all believed that if we followed the rules, we do well. And, I say this on foot of things that are going on all across the West now, where people who have been following the rules all their lives are suddenly becoming minorities in their neighborhoods. The quality of life is going down, services are dropping, inflation is going up. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Oh yeah, there's one other thing I should say. The TV. Now you have these massive TVs that cover an entire wall. But back then you had smaller TVs. They were fatter, but the screen was a lot smaller. And you had small portable TVs. And there is a scene as well where this kind of terrorist group or freedom fighter group, they're hacking into the TV signal. And every so often they're able to get their message across, but not for long, maybe for less than a minute. And it's not very clear either. It's very fuzzy. And the people watching TV, they just want to watch the game. Who's this crank trying to spread fear? All I want to do is watch the game and enjoy life. And there is a scene of a guy, he's standing outside a TV shop. And you don't get this these days, where you could have 40 TVs. Now it would just be one TV in a window of a shop. But back then you could fit 40 TVs. And I think that's interesting, that you have 40 perspectives of an identical thing going on. And I remember a few months back, or maybe a year ago, I made a video about 9/11. And I remember a subscriber said that he witnessed it. He was in Dublin in the city centre. He was in a Pete's electronics store or something. And you had all those TVs. And that's how he witnessed 9/11 outside a TV shop. So I think that is an interesting perspective, and it's gone now.
Yeah, what I meant to mention actually was when Nada went over to the church, yeah, there was a tape recording was playing. So he heard all the singing and like a sermon going on, and he walks in through the back door, and of course he finds this tape recording of the whole thing. And of course he sees that sign on the door, on the wall, they live while you sleep. And he thought, okay, there's something weird going on here. And then he comes across a cupboard full of boxes, but he doesn't get a chance to look into the boxes. But they're obviously stashed away there, so he thinks there's obviously something in here, but he didn't get a chance to look into them, because that's when the preacher comes in and finds them. So he walks out, but he's obviously thinking, right, I need to know what's going on here. So he goes off. And as you said, yeah, as well, in the camp, people are watching the TV, the game show or whatever, and every so often there's an interruption, and some guy's telling them that, yeah, they're watching you. They're evil people. They're feeding on your energy, and they want you poor. They want to make America into a third world country, and they're using you, and then it'll get cut off, and people get annoyed, and they get these kind of headaches, because obviously whatever's beaming through the TVs is affecting the people. And of course, when you think of the radiation and everything that we're getting now, is that happening now? So there's a lot of predictive stuff going on there. So anyway, I'll pass over to Blackbird. Your thoughts on that opening scene, that first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, great observation, because he's setting the stage and giving my history after 9/11, when I got blacklisted and I was living out of my car in a tent for 2 years. I can definitely relate to this character of Nada, where you are literally on your own. You are out there. You have no backup at all. He has all his possessions on his back and a backpack and a sleeping bag, but that's about all he has, right? He has his tools with him, and he's just trying to get a start in the American dream, right? That I've followed the rules and it's supposed to be working out, but obviously because we have cities, and this was in the 80s, and you look at our cities now, what they've degraded into, where the squatter camps aren't so nice as they were in the 80s. and the original distrust of the person, Frank, the black man on the construction site, who's saying, if you need a place to stay, there's this thing over here. And one of the things about being, on the streets is you've got to watch between good shepherds and Judas goats, because one of the biggest scams of predators is to find fresh meat, people that just have shown up at the bus station, train station, whatever, that are completely naive, and the predator spots them, and they usually work together in teams that, oh, I can help you out, I can do this, and next thing you know, you're in a lot of trouble. They mugged you, whatever, you get murdered, and so these, distrust of, well, maybe I'll follow you to this place, but I'm not going to, throw my fate in with you yet until I see if you're really telling me the truth, or if you're just trying to lead me down an alley so your buddies can mug me and take my stuff, right? And so, that's part of that reality. And then, one of the things, like you notice, the people in the squatter camp are watching the television, and they are annoyed when the hacker signal breaks in with the warning. They don't care about the warning. They just want to watch their game or their whatever they're watching. And I find, the other thing is the blind evangelist. And so this idea of seeing is, so basic to this series of, from the short story to the graphic novel to the film, of the blind preacher telling you the things that you can't see. He's trying to warn people of, there are aliens there, and everybody just dismisses them, dismissing the blind preacher. And it's interesting, in the original story and in the graphic novel, he wakes up because he went to see a hypnotist perform, and at the end of the show, the hypnotist says, "Wake up," and that's when he started seeing everything, right? Because he being in the audience, he was also being hypnotized, and then when the hypnotist told him to wake up, that's when he started seeing everything. So this idea of, being able to see past the illusions is, really the whole point of the storyline in all three. They just go about it a little bit differently. And, yes, the thing of they live, we sleep, that was so important, that, this is going on, you have to wake up. But people, that Overton window and that cognitive dissonance, it's a bear to try to get people to see something that they don't want to see. So back to you.
Yeah, I also got the impression from Frank, obviously being a black man, he also feels a bit victimized, because there's a bit of racial injustice in America, of course. So he's the underdog. So his way of dealing with it is, as I say, is just to keep the head down, say nothing, don't question anything, just get on with the job, and get by, while Nada is just a young guy who is new in town, and he's thinking, okay, this is a big city, maybe I can get my start here. So they're both kind of optimistic, but yet they know they're up against it, both of them, and they, as I said, they don't hit it off immediately either. They're kind of, they're not exactly buddy, but that kind of develops as the movie goes on. So the next part then is, so Nada then obviously wants to figure out what's going on in this church. So he goes back later on, and as I said, he sees one of the main guys in the camp going in and out of there, and wondering why is he going in there at 4 a.m, and why is there a service going on there still at 4 o'clock in the morning? So there's something odd going on. And but so he I think he goes into the church, and I think it's at that time when there is again, there's the TVs that are around in the squatter camp, there's the interruptions are coming in a lot more frequently, and obviously the powers that be have figured out something, and the cops come and raid the camp. And Nada goes across to the church again. He says, "I have to, wants to find these boxes." And he finds a box that's just full of these sunglasses, and he doesn't know what the hell this is all about. So he manages to grab them, and I think he grabs the box, yeah. But then he escapes. So it's a big raid. The cops come in. They beat up the preacher, they kill a lot of people, and they trash the whole camp. And it's pretty kind of scary thing what's going on. And Btwixt, can you take it from there, because I'm kind of just got a little bit lost on that, if you don't mind. Sorry about that. I just had a bit of a brain fart there.
No problem.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the cops come and they start taking apart the camp, because this is an illegal camp. These are all the working homeless, etc. So it's razed to the ground. They're coming in from all sides, and Nada manages to escape, and he grabs the hand of I don't know if he's a teenager or a young man, but he grabs the hand of some young fella, and he leads them up a stairs because they're blocked off. So they go up this stairs, and then they climb in a window, and there's some other, the working homeless or the homeless in the building there, and there's a black guy in there. He looks to be under the influence, or he's just completely depressed with the situation. And it is, I think it's after that, so it could be the next day, he goes back into that quote unquote church, and he knows that there's a hidden compartment in the wall, and he takes out this box, he opens it, and it's full of sunglasses. And when he's coming out, there's a cop car driving by, so he goes back in for a second, then he comes back out, and he kind of sidles across to the corner of the building, and then he goes around the other side. And anyway, he keeps one pair of sunglasses, and he chucks the rest of them into a bin, and then he tries to cover them up with, I think it's shredded paper. And that's when he has his epiphany. He's walking down the street, and he puts on the sunglasses, and it's a fantastic scene, and everyone will know this, even if they haven't watched the film. And the sunglasses give a completely different perspective of the world and the system. And when he looks at something, as I said earlier, it could be an advertisement, but then it will actually just, when he puts the sunglasses on, it might just be one word in bold that'll say obey, or it might say stay asleep. Now, there is one command that I think the powers that be, especially in the West, wouldn't be advocating, well, for white people anyway, and that is marry and reproduce. That's also one of the commands that is seen when you wear these sunglasses. So he's having this absolute epiphany. He can't believe it. He's kind of giddy as well. He's giddy with delight that he suddenly, he's obviously shocked at first, but then he gets giddy, and he notices that some of the people walking around don't look like the rest of the people. Now, they kind of, I don't know how to describe them. They look like skeletons, they look like demons. And he sees one guy, it's a businessman, he's buying a magazine, and he keeps staring at him with his sunglasses on, because he sees this is some sort of demon. And the businessman is looking back saying, "What's your problem, man? What's your problem?" And he doesn't really respond. He just keeps staring at him. And then the owner asks him, is he going to buy a magazine? And he's like, no. Nada says no. And then he walks out, and then he's walking by his shop. He goes in, and he sees that a lot of the people in there are these demon creatures. And he insults one of the female customers, telling her how ugly she is. And then he steps backwards, and he falls into this stand of, I don't know what, trinkets, and he falls on the ground. And when he looks up, the female demon is speaking into her watch, and she says, we've got one of them who can see. And I think this is where he goes out, and he ends up being tackled by two policemen. they tell him, we can make this easy, etc., etc. But he decides to try and fight his way out of it. And then I think one of the policemen tries to shoot him, and Nada manages to get a gun and to shoot him. And the other cop is about to shoot him, and he shoots him. So it's completely in self-defense. But this is a very interesting scene, because this gives me the impression that it's in for a penny, in for a pound. He's already in trouble. Now he's shot 2 policemen. The uniform, the defenders of the system. He shot them, and he might as well just go the whole hog now. He's completely in with this movement. He's going to do what he can to throw off the system. But yeah, it is where he shoots the cops is a very good scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. I mean, my little gap there, because that what happened that night when the cops raid the shanty town. It was a little bit confusing as to what the timeline was, but it was late at night, and so when they come, they beat up the minister, pretty much to death. They're kicking the lard out of everybody there basically, and they were shooting people, and they totally destroyed the site completely. And so they all get out of there, and Nada then returns next day, goes back to the church again, which has been emptied, but he finds one of the boxes that was in that compartment, and he opens it in the alleyway, and of course he finds that they're just full of cheap sunglasses, and he's wondering what's going on here. So he knows that there's something odd happening, but he's still not quite sure. But also one of the ringleaders of the group also know that Nada is figuring things out. So, and the fact that he probably has got his hands on these sunglasses as well. So, as you said, he goes into town then, and he puts the glasses on. But I'll pass over to Blackbird anyway for his view on that part. Yeah, because this is probably the best part of it, I think.
Right, and one of the interesting things is you see this helicopter flying over the squatter camp, and then you see this massive mobilization of militarized police coming down on this church, and then just going scorched earth on the whole place, right? And just killing everybody left and right. And it's like, what could possibly be going on to justify this type of police action? And it's a little tidbit that John Carpenter was an avid helicopter pilot. I don't know if he still is, but he would also write himself into all his movies flying the helicopter. And so that was actually him apparently in the helicopter scenes, which I thought was interesting. But, this idea of you got, surveillance, they're scanning for the signal, they've located it, now they're going scorched earth. They have a hidden compartment with the glasses, that he finds the glasses. And it's interesting that they're referred to as Hoffman lenses. And this is a tip of the hat to Albert Hoffman, the person who developed LSD. And you think in 1954, Aldous Huxley wrote The Doors of Perception about, his first hallucinogenic experience and having his eyes opened, etc. And of course, Albert Hoffman was famous for his first trip on LSD, the magic bicycle ride, where he takes some, goes riding his bike, and then his whole reality changed of his perception while on the drug. So this idea of the Hoffman lenses was like this, you're seeing at a different level, and that he's at the newsstand, and instead of seeing all of the headlines and all the magazines, like you said, you just see the block print of the subliminal commands. And so I did a lot of research in my early days of people like that were doing research on subliminal seduction. There was a guy named Brian Key who wrote several books on how media does this intentionally, that they the madmen of Madison Avenue deliberately put all of these subliminals into programming, be it media, be it print media, be it television, be it films, whatever, that there are subliminal messages in everything. And so these Hoffman lenses allow him to see, at a different level. So I find that, interesting that he's just seeing all of these aliens all of a sudden, and that he has now become known to them because one of them has spotted him. Then we've got one that can see. And so this is the part of, once you start seeing these people, you become a target. This is the whole thing of being a targeted individual. So this, suddenly the whole dynamic changes into the scene with the police officers that aren't real human police officers. They're aliens that are there to assassinate him. And so he is fighting for, he knows he has broken no laws, and these are not police officers keeping the peace. These are assassins sent out to take care of a problem, and he's the problem. And that he makes the decision, in, like you said, in for a penny, in for a pound. He kills the 2 alien cops, and now he's definitely on the hit list. And so this is where the whole dynamic changes for him, that he's now on the run from these people, and at the same time is trying to expose them. So back to you.
So when he puts on the glasses again, so he's looking at the billboards, and the first one he sees is Obey. And then when he takes it off, it's advertising, as I have it up here, the Control Data Corporation, which is creating a transparent computing environment. Then another billboard, which displays, come to the Caribbean, emblazoned with a woman in a bikini lying on a beach, and now it displays the text, marry and reproduce. I want to come back to that one, actually, why that one was put in there. And then at a nearby newsstand, he's this is where he sees the businessman, and he's looking at the magazines, and all he's seen is obey, consume, sleep, no independent thought, do not question authority. And again, he's putting them on and taking them off and going like, what is going on? And then he notices the man at the magazine stand, and he's like shocked, like he's not human, as you said. He looks either like a skeleton or some kind of alien creature. And then, of course, when he puts the glasses, when he takes the glasses off, he looks normal. Puts them back on, he sees this strange humanoid, and then he looks around as well, and he sees normal people, right, with the glasses on, and then he sees these alien types. So you can see there's a difference here. So they live among us. They live among us. So they're among the normal people. Most people are normal, but there's a few out there, mainly rich people, getting in and out of big cars that look like aliens. So, and then he also noticed that the guy who runs the newsstand is holding some dollars in his hands, and on the dollars it says, "This is your God." So that is some very interesting stuff there. And so let's go back to that one, marry and reproduce. You brought that up, Btwixt, because that's not something that's kind of promoted these days. And what do you think? Why do you think that was put in there?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. It's possible that, you know, the people behind this film, they had a leftist, well, I'm sure they had a leftist slant, and that would have included the idea that the planet was overpopulated. There were too many people, too many consumers, too many useless eaters. So it might be that, but I think I just can't imagine that being, you know, in the mix now.
Yeah, Blackbird, what's your thoughts on that one? Because I was surprised to see that one, you know.
I totally agree that, you know, watching it in current year, that's totally incongruous with the agenda. They don't want, especially white European people, breeding and having families. You know, it makes more sense to have everybody atomized as little individuals rather than as family units. So I see that as incongruous to the rest of the film as well. So back to you.
Yeah, because when you look back at Frank, you know, he's got his wife and his kids back in Detroit, and again, he's keeping his head down. So he's because that's his main concern. So he doesn't want to do anything bad because it could end up hurting them. So maybe it's being used as a kind of a weapon in a way. But I think when you think about it, family is really the foundation of a strong society. So that would be something that we'd be encouraging more than discouraging. But yeah, it was just interesting that was kind of thrown in there. So then, yeah, Nada then discovers, he looks around, everyone, a lot of these people are, most of them are normal, but there certainly 1 in 5 are these alien types, and they're kind of the wealthy people. So he goes into the grocery store and he insults a few people, and as you say, she has a wristwatch on her, and where she says, we have one here that can see. So he runs out and he encounters the 2 cops, who, as I said, are not cops, they're aliens. And, Nada has to make a choice there, and he kills both of them. So right there, he's on the run now, they're going to come after him. And then he stumbles into a bank filled again with normal people, but then there's also quite a few alien types in there too. And he comes out with that famous line in there, "I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum." And then he starts shooting people all over the place. And then, of course, he flees the bank and into a parking garage, and that's where he comes across the other main actor in it, Meg Foster, who is Holly Thompson, and forces her at gunpoint to take her to her house on the outskirts of LA. So, and of course, he also noticed that she is not one of them. So, but she does work in this TV station, which is the interesting part. This is a major part in all of this, the TV station, because this is where all the signals are going out, and this is where the control system obviously is. So once he's in the house and he puts her at her ease, and she has a drink and all the rest of it. He tries to tell her what's going on and whatever, and she doesn't really, agree. She's skeptical about it, and she tells him that she's an executive of the local TV station, and so while he's kind of relaxing and whatever, he's not paying much attention. She pushes him out the window. He rolls down this kind of big hill, and she calls the cops, and so he's kind of quite hurt. He's stumbling along, gets under some kind of a bridge or something, sees all the cops, and then he manages to stumble away. So we'll go from there then, Btwixt. What's your take after that? Or if there's anything else you want to add on to that.
Right, yeah, I'll just mention a few things. When you mentioned Brizer, Frank is in a bit of a bind because he's a wife and 2 kids back in Detroit. And I have a quote here from him. He says, "I've got a wife and 2 kids back in Detroit. I haven't seen them in 6 months. The steel mills were laying people off. They finally went under. We gave the steel companies a break. They gave themselves pay raises. The golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules." And when Nada, when he's looking at things through his sunglasses, there is a part where I don't know, is it supposed to be the president of America? But some politician anyway. He looks at the TV, and it turns out that this politician or president is also one of these aliens. But when I was watching the film 2 weeks ago, I was looking away from the screen, whatever, as this was going on, and I heard the voice. And I thought to myself, that sounds like Tucker Carlson. Mr. Pressure Valve himself, I was like, that sounds like Tucker Carlson, And then I thought to myself, this would have been, came out in 88. Maybe this scene was produced in 87. I was like, Carson wasn't around then on TV, but it just sounded very much like him, the style, the cadence, everything. Another thing I should say, Blackbird mentioned this at the start, you've got your in group and you've got your out group. And when Nada goes into that shop and he ends up, having to flee because the woman says, we've got one who can see. There is you can kind of hear tidbits of conversation going on. And there's one where you've got two men. One is an alien and one is a human. And the human is like saying, oh man, you got promoted. I wish I could get promoted. And the alien is like, you'll get promoted eventually. I just thought that was very good. Without the sunglasses, you wouldn't realize why one of them had been promoted and the other one hadn't. But then to go back once again to that scene where he shoots the two policemen, after he's killed them, he says, you bastards die just like we do. And that's a revelation to him as well. These aliens, for all their technology, for all their camouflage, they're mortal. They're not gods. They can be taken down. And it's, I generally don't see, maybe it's more common, or has been more common in the last few years in America, whatever, but generally with those films, the cop was always the good guy, generally. The badge was like, what do you call it? Trying to think of the word, on an angel's head. What do you call it? That circle over an angel's head.
Halo.
Halo, that's it. The badge was like a halo. And here, the cops are not nice people. They're protecting, they're aliens, obviously, but they're protecting a horrible system. They don't care about human rights or anything like that. And we don't usually, like in most films, we're generally rooting for the cop. And that's the system trying to reincorporate the importance of the guardians of the system. And I remember watching RoboCop, I think it was in the first one, the bad guy called Clarence. They said he was a bad man because he was a cop killer. So the idea of killing a cop is the worst thing you could do. Training Day was, I think, an eye opener for a lot of people. I think that had Denzel Washington and Ed Norton. It was the idea that cops could be corrupt and they could use the system to benefit themselves. But all our lives, we've been conditioned to respect the police. And, if you're walking down the street and a police car is driving slowly by, people generally, they change their posture. Maybe they look down on the ground or whatever. It's part and parcel of the system we were brought up in, that you generally have to show respect to the police. And you think of the way a police car is, it's very bright. It has those flashing colors, on the siren. Even in the daytime, you'll see the sirens going. And you have the stripes along the side of the car. So it's kind of like a dangerous insect that you have to respect, or, you could get stung. So yeah, the idea that Nada would just take out two policemen like that, that's a big step. And once you've made that step, anything is possible, really. So yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Okay, yeah, and also in that scene where he shoots the cop, a drone comes in and finds him, and then of course he points the gun at him and shoots the drone. Now, 1988, if you saw that, you'd think, okay, this is science fiction, but it's a reality now, isn't it? Here we are. So Blackbird,
they had them in China, didn't they? They had them in China during the scamdemic, didn't they? Telling people.
Yeah, exactly.
These drones flying around telling people to stay indoors.
Mm-hmm. So that was an interesting scene as well. So yeah, Blackbird, over to you. Any thoughts on that scene?
Great observations, and putting this in context of what the 80s were, especially here in the United States, but most white nations, you had this rise of what was called vulture capitalism, or the pirates of Wall Street, as they were known, because all of these compromised politicians basically deregulated everything. You know, the banking got deregulated, the telecommunications industry got deregulated, the medical industry got deregulated, and you had this predator class of investors that would basically buy up companies, hook or crook. You know, they just, you know, they would bankrupt them if they had to, buy them up, and instead of trying to put them back in production, they would just cannibalize them and sell it all off. And it was all about destruction capitalism. That's why they were called vulture capitalists. They would, you know, come in, you know, these factories or stuff that had been there for generations suddenly were no more, and these people were getting filthy rich, and also offshoring all the industry, right? And so this idea of people getting rich off of the misfortunes of others was a key part of that yuppie culture. That's a term you don't hear much anymore, but, you know, yuppies, the young urban professionals that only care about money and entertainment and having the best of everything, and had no morality at all when it came to business, because business is business, and, you know, it's all about, you know, whatever you have to do to close the deal. And so I love this, you know, being the backdrop of it. And the young, you know, single woman, Holly Thompson, you know, you're talking about her, played by Meg Foster, with those incredible eyes of hers. That, you know, she is that, you know, prototype yuppie. You see her apartment is just, everything's perfect. She's on her own. She makes her own money. She's a professional. She can do whatever she wants. The system is working for her. And so you have Nada, who is now on the run. And one of the things about your body is, at some point your biological needs are going to kick in. You got to find some place to go to the bathroom. You've got to find water. You've got to find food. And most importantly, you've got to sleep. You can't keep going. And falling asleep when you're being hunted is very vulnerable making. It's, you know, you are putting yourself at risk if you fall asleep. So this, you know, Nada has been going for several hours since the first raid on the church. And so now, you know, his sleep needs are kicking in. He's got to get someplace safe. So he, you know, kidnaps the character, the TV exec. They go to her apartment. He's trying to get some sleep, and she ends up throwing him out the window. So now he's sleep deprived and he's wounded from the call. So now he's at a tactical disadvantage, and, you know, he doesn't have all his weapons anymore. And so that's a big part of this thing. So now, you know, you are hunted, you're wounded, you are, you know, you do not have a lot of things going for you. And so he is definitely needing some help right now. And so he thought she could get it from the girl, but she ends up pushing him out the window. And so now he's in a really bad position. He's being hunted at the tactical disadvantage. So back to you.
Yes, and he also left the glasses behind him as well. So that's another disadvantage, is that because now he can't tell who's who. So, so he he manages to limp or hide in a few places, and then limp back to the construction site to find Frank and tell him what happened and what he discovered. And obviously the story's got out, so Frank knows what's happened, and like I say, what are you doing here, man? You got to get out of here, they're after you. And Nada's tried to tell him what's happening, but he's not really interested. So he's got basically no friends. He's on his own now. So he goes back to the alley where he left the sunglasses, and he tries to see if he can find another pair. And he realizes then the garbage truck is pulled in, and it's loaded all the boxes into the truck. And so he jumps in and manages to retrieve at least one pair of glasses anyway. And then the truck pulls off, and so at least he's got his glasses back. And then all of a sudden Frank shows up with his wages, and says, you never got a chance to get your wages, so here's that. And basically Frank was basically saying, right, that's it, see you later. And then he noticed that Frank is normal because he's got the glasses on him, so he sees that he's normal. And he says, listen, you got to try and put on these sunglasses. And this is, of course, is the famous fight scene. This is the other famous scene in this movie, which is amazing. And I actually timed it there. I watched it last night. It goes on for 6 minutes, 6 minutes of the two of them literally baiting the shit out of each other. And it's a classic fight scene. It really is very good. And again, it's that whole thing about trying to wake people up, you know. We see things they can't, and we're trying to say, please look, put on the glasses and you'll see it. And he doesn't want to know. Frank doesn't want to know. It doesn't matter what he does. And the two of them are fighting, they're punching at each other, kicking each other in the groin. Or, oh man, there's some punches being thrown around here, and the two of them are literally in bits on the ground, and eventually he gets Frank, he's on the ground, and he literally puts the glasses on his head. Now look, grabs him up and looks out down the alley, and sure enough there's two people down the end who are looking up, and they are aliens. And he's like, Frank is like, oh my god, what's happening here? And he looks around him. So at long last he's got Frank to realize what's going on here. And, you know, when you think of what we've been doing over the years, trying to wake people up, because we have put on the sunglasses. We can see what's going on. We might know everything, but we have a very good idea, and we certainly can join a lot of dots. And we are desperately trying to get people on board to see what we see, and it's extremely frustrating when they can't. And it's a very interesting scene, that one, and it really does sum up what's going on right now. But I do think it's interesting that we're moving into a phase now where people are beginning to start to put on those glasses, even though tentatively they're beginning to put them on to see exactly what's happening, because they know something is not quite right here. So over to you, Btwixt, on that particular scene.
Yeah, it's definitely overdone, that fight scene. And I have to say, like, when I watched it, I was thinking, because I hadn't, in fairness, Blackbird, he sent us a link. I didn't get to read all of it, but I got to read the start where it says this film is based on a short story. And that made sense to me then, because when I watched it and I was watching this fight scene, you know, there are like several parts of it where you think it's over. They stop fighting, and then they're back at it. And I guess they were trying to stretch out the film to make it a feature-length film, because had this been made as a short film, obviously it wouldn't be as famous as it is now. There are some, I'm sure, there's some great short films out there, but nobody ever mentions them really. So yeah, they had to stretch this out. And I guess Nada, like with Frank, the reason he keeps saying, put on the glasses, damn it, and another brawl ensues. But with some people, unfortunately, to make them see, you have to drill it into their skull. They need tough love. There are other people who will just rail against that approach completely. You're going nowhere. You have to use a different approach with them. Maybe just mention something and leave the room and see if they'll join the dots themselves, because they need, I think it's the ego as well. They need to feel that they've come to that conclusion themselves. You didn't guide them in any way. But yeah, when he finally puts on the glasses and, you know, he has his revelation, Nada says, I think it's Nada says to him, brother, life's a bitch and she's back in heat. And I think that's a great quote. Yeah. It's up there with the All Out of Bubblegum one as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It turns out that Nada has daddy issues. It's a bit weird. He starts mentioning his father, and his father was nice, but then he became a horrible man. And I don't know, was he trying to cut him or something? This could be, he could be talking about daddy government here, you know, that he put all his faith in in the system, and it let him down. But then he says, after that little anecdote, he says, "I ain't daddy's little boy no more." So he's become a man. And you said just there a few minutes ago, Brizer, about trying to. You said that you're wearing the sunglasses. You can see some of the things that are going on, not everything. And I will say, to give you your kudos, and I've given you these kudos before, but when the scamdemic started, you and Ogner were the first ones I saw on social media who called it for what it was. And just to ask you, it's slightly off topic, but how did it feel? Because you would have got a lot of flack for that at the time, I'm sure. How did it feel, people, telling you not to be such a nut job, etc.?
Well, I was kind of used to it, because when during my so-called waking up experience, if you want to call it that, I remember telling people about 9/11 that it was an inside job. And this is back in 2010, 11, when I really got to understand what 9/11 was about. And people just looked at me as if I had two heads, right? And I maybe found that I was not doing it the right way. I was being a bit too in people's faces a bit, and they just reacted and said, you're nuts, or I remember one person saying, "You just got too much time in your hands." And I was kind of thinking, well, I'm glad I got that time in my hands, because now I can figure this stuff out. And I suppose down through the years, you get called a crazy conspiracy theorist or whatever. So I was kind of used to that. But I think just on calling the scamdemic out, I kind of had an idea that they were going to pull something like this off, because thinking about Agenda 2030, back in 2020, around 10 years away, we're now only 6 years away, they're going to have to pull off something big in this decade. And it was within 3 months they pulled it off. And I could see it building once the whole Chinese thing was kicking off, that it was, this is going to spread worldwide and all the rest of it. And also I figured out before that I was questioning this thing, do viruses even exist, right? I was looking at that and going deep into that. And so I was well before a lot of people who maybe figured out that this was nothing more than a flu or something like that, you know what I mean? I was going even further, But yeah, I mean, I didn't get that much flack, really. I was just, people just disagreed with me mainly. They thought I was looking at things a bit too deeply. But it is nice to kind of be vindicated, but I'm not looking for a medal here or anything. I think this is just part of the process, and it's the fact that you're able to call things out. Maybe I think once you're on a particular path of trying to find out what the truth is, we don't necessarily find the truth, but it's the journey to find the truth is where you actually find the truth, I think. And once you're open to that, things just drop into your lap, and you see things, and you don't have to particularly look very hard. It just comes to you, and it's a very interesting journey that we're on right now, looking at the world and where it's going. And I think the more we're open to whatever, even though it might sound the craziest thing ever, but we have to question absolutely everything now, because the last 4 years have shown us you cannot now trust the politicians, the media, the scientists, the doctors, you cannot trust any of them anymore. So now you have to think, well, the only person I can trust is myself and others who are on the same page. And there's not that many of us. But what it does do is it makes you stronger. So that's my take on that. So yeah, back to the movie Blackbird. Your take on that scene where were we? Yeah, the fight scene and all that. Yeah.
Right, and from my personal history, for the listeners not familiar with my background, I was living the dream up to 9/11. I was the professional engineer, going all over the world. I had a political career. I was running for North Carolina House in the 2002 election. And so after I became a 9/11 truther on 9/11. When I saw Building 7 collapse in its own footprint at free fall speed, and when they tried to sell me the magic cell phone calls. And at the time, I was designing classes about cell phone technologies that I was training people like the CIA and the NSA and the FBI and state governments and military, et cetera, on these technologies. And it's like, okay, it doesn't work that way. Neither of those work that way on this planet. And, also you have to remember that all of the illegal electronic surveillance that the NSA was doing, and Israel, because always remember, Israel had a backdoor pipe behind the NSA sweeping up everything. And this was, I was trying to prove that in 2003 when I got blacklisted. Edward Snowden finally proved that with his Booz Allen Hamilton data, that indeed Israel did have a back door, and they had to finally, acknowledge that in 2013. So 10 years later, I'm finally vindicated on that. But to try to tell people that all of this electronic surveillance was in place before 9/11 under General Michael Hayden, who was appointed by Bill Clinton, friend of Jeffrey Epstein. So you just see the corruption, and then all the ties with Booz Allen Hamilton. So it's just trying to tell people that there is this cesspool, slime mold corruption at the heart of this whole 9/11 thing that we need to look at. And it was just too big. People just couldn't. That's like, well, if that was true, they'd say it on television. It's like the television is corrupted. Everything you see there is lies. They don't have to tell the truth anymore. And friend and family alike is just, well, you've just gone crazy. You have thrown away a perfectly good career, and now you're living on the street. I hope you're satisfied. You have disappointed your parents so much. You caused great shame and dishonor to the whole family. You're not invited to Christmas no more. That's the kind of reality you get when you are at this level of trying to expose the truth. And so that battle of trying to get somebody to put on the glasses, just sums that up as, this is the struggle against people's cognitive dissonance and their Overton window beliefs in the system. And you're trying to tear that down so they can see the reality, and they don't want their worldview torn down. And so this is, what we're up against in the truth movement is we have this hostile force that's in control of the media. And, people still trust that magic flickering box in the corner that somehow they think that there's laws that say those people on that magic television box have to tell the truth. And they somehow have your best interest at heart, and nothing could be further from the truth. And that, is developed in the, character of the station manager, Holly Thompson, that she will play that role of the ultimate betrayal later on in the film, that, she's part of this television station that is sending out all this bogus information that's harmful, but she gets paid really good to do it, so she's not going to make waves, right? So that's just some of my observation of the classic fight scene. So back to you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Blackbird. So basically now Frank is awake. He's put on the sunglasses so he can see what's happening. So the two guys check into a hotel, a kind of a sleazy kind of hotel, just to clean up, because both of them, they've literally beaten the crap out of each other, and clean up their bruises and put bandages on and whatever. And the leader of the rebel group, who was in the church, saw them checking in, and then they make contact, and they learn that there's a meeting held on in a certain hidden location that evening. So they meet up to see where they go from here. And I thought there's an interesting point where the humanoid aliens are blamed for increased carbon dioxide and methane emissions. So this is tying into the climate change nonsense, you know. And so when I heard that, and I also heard things that, oh, these aliens are also responsible for racial injustice, you know, so that they throw in these little things every now and again in these movies. But, you know, you just have to, that's just what it is. And so they tried, you know, trying to make plans. The leader of the group says, right, we can't go all out there trying to shoot these people. They're too powerful. There's only a few of us. So we've got to be clever. And that's good advice. We have to be kind of clever here and not go out all guns blazing here. And we got to figure out what's going on. So that's when they discover about the watch. One of the guys has found one of the watches, and they said this is something that they can use. They can talk into it, and it makes them disappear. And so anyway, at that time, I think the cops figure out where they are again, and they they raid this place where they're all meeting, and pretty much come in and pretty much kill everybody. But again, Frank and Nada escape, and they're hiding in an alleyway again. But Frank has got the watch, and he's figuring out something. Presses a button, and there's a hole in the ground. All of a sudden, just appears. And you got 10. There's a little voice saying you got 10 seconds to jump in. So they're firing at the cops, and Frank jumps in, and then Nada jumps in, and the hole seizes over, and they're in this underground basement. So yeah, we'll just let's go from there, right? Btwixt, anything you want to say on that particular scene?
Right. When there's that second raid, really the cops are, you know, they're exterminators. There's no negotiation. They just come in. I think they bomb. There's a bomb that goes off, and you think that it's killed Holly Thompson. This is what you think, because Nada is speaking with her. He's surprised to see her at this, you know, secret meeting of the underground network, and he's chatting to her, and she says something like, you know, I didn't believe you, but now and then there's the explosion, and there's pandemonium, and as you said, Frank and John manage to escape. This watch opens a wormhole, they jump into it, and it looks like they're in a sewer. We find out later they're not actually in a sewer, or they're not in a corridor of a bunker or whatever. They're somewhere else, somewhere quite far away. But yeah, I think it's a good scene. And yeah, when I saw it, I was thinking of the, you know, when the cops come in all guns blazing, I was thinking of the, you know, the Branch Davidians or Ruby Ridge, one of those scenarios where you've just got this intense power of the state coming in and wiping out any sort of collective that has a different opinion. I wanted to ask you guys, because when Nada and Frank are at this meeting, they're told, you know, take off your sunglasses, we're all human in here, but they're given something, and I wasn't sure what they were given. They kind of put it up towards their face, like were the contact lenses they were given?
Contact lenses. Yeah, that's right. I meant to mention that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's to replace the sunglasses. So you don't need the sunglasses now. You can put the contact lenses in. And as you said, Blackbird, you mentioned these Hoffman lenses. An inventor came out with these Hoffman lenses and shows the world as it really is. So they don't need the sunglasses now. They have the contact lenses. Yeah.
And just to say as well that a while ago, Blackbird mentioned Meg Foster and her beautiful eyes. And I was watching the film, I kept thinking, you know, that they can't be her eyes. You know, they're too pale blue. Too pale blue.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, and I looked it up, and it says here, so that, you know, if I fact checked this, you know, this is an official source. It says Foster's striking pale blue eyes were dubbed the eyes of 1979 by Mademoiselle magazine. So there you go. It's official. But it did say, I looked up another article while you were talking, and it said that she would wear contact lenses sometimes for films because her eyes were too much of a character flaw. They were kind of too strong, you know. So she would try to play down the color of her eyes. But either way, yeah, she has an incredible pair of eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, she has. And what I thought about the eyes too was because they looked, yeah, they were incredible eyes, but they didn't look quite human in it, and that's why you're thinking, is she one of them?
Yeah, yeah, they looked a bit alien. Yeah,
they looked a bit alien. Yeah. So yeah, Blackbird, over to you.
Yeah, her character, because she's at the meeting. The optimist in you say, "Oh wow, he left the sunglasses at her apartment. She was a disbeliever, but then she put them on and now she sees." And so she's, being the reporter, was able to track down the resistance, and she's now part of the team, right? And, you find out that no, she's not part of the team, and she's most likely the one that gave away their location at the meeting and maybe planted the bomb, right? So, the femme fatale that you think has, joined your movement is actually, the plant. And yes, the improvement of the contact lenses over the sunglasses, that not only do you not have to wear the sunglasses, they're less conspicuous, and also they are less draining, because one of the things that they cautioned was don't wear the sunglasses too long because it'll fatigue you and give you a really headache and make you sick, and so this awakening has its cost. And I went through that with my cognitive dissonance, of when you challenge your own worldview, you get physically ill. When you realize, this is the truth you don't want to swallow, those chunky bits, the hard pills to swallow, will make you physically ill. So I like that they put that in. And then, so they come in and you're just going scorched earth, and you see scenes from the media where they are broadcasting that this terrorist group has been tracked down and annihilated, and this is all great stuff. And like you said, every time the powers that should not be want to take some group out, they label them terrorists, go in and kill them, like Waco, Ruby Ridge, the list goes on and on and on.
Are there a bunch of commies? There are a bunch of commies.
Yeah, communists, or they're this or they're that, some way to demonize them, bunch of anti-Semites. And that justifies this over-the-top police action of just throwing due process out the window. And so they just come in and said, oh, this was a terror cell and we annihilated it. Let's give each other medals. And so now they're on the run, but they've managed to get one of the watches and they're trying to figure it out. And that's when they accidentally open the portal, which shows how the aliens have this tactical advantage where if they get in a pinch, they can just teleport out. Right. And so now they have opened the portal. It's, well, we can stand here and die, or we can go into the unknown, take the portal and take our chances. So, that's a very important part of the movie is, do you take the unknown or do you take the known? It's like they're going to kill us if we stay here. No telling what's going to happen if we go down the rabbit hole. So back to you.
That's it. You got to take your chances, So they end up in this underground bunker or basement or whatever, but it's a series of tunnels, and it just happens to be under the main TV station. And there's some guards there that they manage to avoid, and then they come across this big dinner, a big kind of place where people are having dinner, and there's a guy speaking saying how we've eliminated this terror cell and we're in real control right now, and all you people who have joined us, your investments have gone up by 30% and everything's looking really good and this is the way forward. And then they meet one of the guys from the camp, who obviously thinks that he's obviously been recruited into the bad guys, and he thinks that Nat and Frank have also been recruited. He's, hi guys, good to see you again, and not surprised to see you here, but you're here, that's great. So let me show you around. So he does a tour of the whole place, shows this kind of a station, I suppose. It's like where they walk in and they just get beamed up into some other dimension or something. And so it just tells you that these people, these aliens, are certainly not from here. And, you know, when, you know, we do hear about these underground bunkers all over the world, and that the elite are building these underground bunkers, and like what exactly are they building underneath there? We have to wonder about that. And is it a case where they do have to go underground when things are getting a bit hot? They can go underground and stay there for a while and re-emerge again when things suit them, you know, that the whole idea of the phoenix rising from the ashes type of thing. So yeah, so they come up to where the TV station is, and then Frank and Nada then, right, okay, there's a few guards come along and they start shooting again. They start killing a few of these guys. And the drifter guy, he, again, talks into his watch, so he's out of there. And so we're coming up towards the end of the movie here now. And they have to find a way, they obviously figure out a way that the signal that's controlling people is obviously on the top of the roof of this TV station, the TV studio, and they need to get up there to disengage that or to blow it up or whatever. And so, right, well, before we finish, we get to the final scene, I'll just pass over to Btwixt and get your take on that bit where they're in the tunnels and they meet your man, their friend, the drifter, and then the guy, you know, the big dinner that was going on and the speeches that were made. Btwixt, over to you for that one.
Yeah, it's all too familiar in a way. It's a big conference that's going on. These are the big wigs. You know, I think you've got a few aliens in there with them, but they seem to be predominantly humans. And they've been eating the fattened calf. They're all very happy. They're smiling. They're, you know, generally psychopaths are very happy if they feel that they're making lots of money and their status is up. Their ego is inflated, and you see this, you know, when you've got Irish politicians going off to the European Union and they're delighted to get selfies with some other politicians from other European countries, and they're all slapping each other on the back. We're doing a great job, you know, we're wonderful. We're fighting climate change. We're helping the poor refugees and all this sort of stuff. So it's a big ego fest. And I have a little bit here from that. Yeah, it says by the year America and the entire planet will be under the protection of this power alliance. The gains have been substantial for us and for you, the human power elite. So obviously there is no human power elite. Even, you know, the highest up humans are slaves for these aliens. But
Yeah.
you know, they don't seem to think that that's the case. They think they've also got their snouts in the trough. Not at all. They're just being bought off the way you can buy off any corrupt scumbag. So he says, you have given us the resources we need for our expansion. In return, the per capita income of each of you has grown. This year alone, it's an average, whatever, 30-something%. So they're being bought off. And these aliens obviously want much more than money, but the humans are delighted with their money. And you said earlier, Brizer, that when Nada put on the sunglasses and looked down at the money, what did it say on the whatever?
This is your God.
That's it. This is your God. So very, very good. Yeah, so they're trying to get up to where the signal is, where the TV studio is, And yeah, when they arrive in that, what they think is an underground under the city, you can hear these two alien soldiers speaking, and it says, Operation Steel Fist is a success. We have eliminated the terrorists. And they're like, the two soldiers are delighted. They're whooping about this. We've just eliminated terrorists. And it's mentioned a number of times in this film, especially by the preacher, the notion that we humans are livestock. We're livestock for these aliens. And I saw a video clip today, and it's from that village in Ireland, Newtown, Mount Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And it was a quaint country lane, and you had a lot of protesters, a lot of local people walking down with their Ireland flags and their placards and all the rest. But they could only walk down so far because the police had put up what looked to be a fence, a barrier, running across the middle of the country lane. And that's how farmers keep their livestock in fields, by using gates, by using barriers, so that they won't be able to go where they want, etc. And I thought that was very symbolic, that you have everyone thinks the police are there to keep the peace, and the police are there to protect the citizens. And here you have the police stopping the citizens from going down a country lane that probably gets about 20 vehicles going by every hour. It looked like I can imagine it would be a very quiet road, but yet here you had the rent-a-cops with the barrier. And I'll pass it over to Blackbird.
Great observations. Yes, that they go down the rabbit hole and find themselves at basically an alien stockholders meeting of these traitors to their species, traitors to the planet, that have basically adapted the philosophy, if you can't beat them, join them, right? And even though these aliens consider the humans livestock, just to be used for their roles, they're very well pampered livestock, and they're making all this money. They've got the best of the food. They're drinking champagne. They're hanging out with all the beautiful people, etc. And one of the things that was in the graphic novel that's not in the film is it actually goes full H.G. Wells in showing that the aliens are indeed harvesting the humans and eating them and eating their flesh and drinking their blood. There's a little panel, that's showing the room of these human corpses being basically cut up and processed, right? And so the graphic novel is more direct to that, but this idea of an alien species that sees you as something to be enslaved, exterminated, or eaten, that you're just another product for them to consume. And then they get the tour from this collaborator that was in the camp, and he thinks they've also sold out. And he's like, oh, you got on the winning team, and just making the case of these aliens, they know what they're doing. They've got their act together, and this is going to be great once they have gotten full control of the planet. It'll be, a new dawn for humanity. They're going to end all wars, etc. And this is like the big live Pax Judaica. Once we let the Chabad Lubavitches control everything, we'll finally get peace on the planet, right? So, a little observation there. And the other thing was, that once the collaborator figures out that they're not fellow collaborators, then he uses one of the watches to bail out on them, and they go in and find the television station and shoot their way in to now have their plan of how they're going to attack the aliens by disrupting the signal. So now they've got we've got one shot at this, and if we fail, humanity's doomed, right? So this is kind of where we are. High stakes poker. So I'll send it back over to Brizer.
Yeah, as I said, if you can't beat them, join them. And sadly, we see a lot of that these days. People say, well, what can you do? You just want to just get on with it, keep your head down, and you'll be all right. But they'll come after you eventually. And because if you join the winning team, well, you'll get some extra goodies, but they're still going to come and get you eventually. So that was the theme. That was the message that was coming through there. Selling out, being a traitor, and they're the worst, basically. So. Your own people, the people that you think you could trust, they're generally good people, but they have this weakness of selling out to these people who want to kill everybody. So, yeah. So anyway, we're getting to the final stages of the movie then, and they find Holly. Eventually, they go through the TV studio, and they find Holly, and they're heading up to the top of the roof, and Nada goes ahead, and then Holly has a gun and she kills Frank. And so Nada then finds the big signal type thing that's on the top, which is beaming out the messages to the whole city, probably to the whole world, saying, this is how it is, obey, consume, do what you're told, don't question anything, and everything will be fine. And he says, right, I found it, right, this has got to go. And they say, Frank, are you here? Are you with me? And Holly. And then Holly says, well, Frank isn't here anymore. And she turns around and she's got the gun pointed at him. Says, drop it now. It's done, you're not going to win this. And so he drops the gun, but he has a gun hidden in his sleeve. And at that point, police helicopters come up as well and shining a light in on them. All guns are pointing at them. But he pulls out the gun. He realizes I've got to do it now. I'm doomed anyway, but at least we might as well. I have to go out in style here. So he kills Holly and then turns and shoots at the whatever you call it, a kind of a beam type thing where which is pointing straight out, and he shoots that, disables the whole thing, and the whole thing explodes. The helicopter then kind of, because there's smoke and fire everywhere, the helicopter has to move away, and then all of a sudden the signal is broken, and people who are watching the TV all over the place are seeing at long last that who's in control here. And you see a scene like a sex scene where this woman is making love to this guy, and the guy is an alien. She got a very big shock when she saw that one, and I thought it was good too when Nada, when he eventually blew up that whole thing, that whole contraption, that he stuck his finger up to the cops in the helicopter, the middle finger, and says, right, gotcha, you bastards, And then basically all is revealed, and that's when the movie ends. So, your take on that final scene, Btwixt?
Yeah, it was a good scene, and I guess the idea was he had to sacrifice himself for humanity. And as you said, the aliens, their camouflage is gone now with the signal gone. People can see them for what they are. Hideous creatures. And I just want to say as well, I saw the other day Blackbird, he retweeted something, and I thought it was very good. It says how to make a lie an accepted truth, and this kind of goes along with what we saw, where you have that conference board meeting. The humans who are going along with the program are being rewarded with money, their god, selling out their own species. And it says here, how to make a lie an accepted truth. Infiltrate academia. give them grant money to research and promote your lie. They can be believers or useful idiots. Tie your lie to activist or human rights movements. Donate money to people willing to promote the agenda. Be persistent.
Yeah, sums it up. And Blackbird, your thoughts on that final scene?
Yeah, I love that meme that outlined the method, and the problem with the psychological warfare is it works. That's what we're up against. But yeah, the final scene where Holly has betrayed everyone. Nada kills her, destroys the transmitter, and breaks the signal, but then he's executed by the cops in the helicopter and everything blows up. So he's, made the sacrifice. And this is the gambit strategy. It's like, okay, to win, we have to make a sacrifice. And that's what the gambit strategy is all about. So this idea of sacrificing yourself for the greater good of humanity. And now everybody can see the aliens for what they are, and this is supposedly when the war begins. And it's interesting, in the original short story and in the graphic novel, after he's exposed the aliens, he still dies, not from getting shot, but because once he had become a targeted individual, he gets a phone call from the aliens, which in the short story and the graphic novel are called fascinators, which I find fascinating that they were called fascinators. And basically the message was a subliminal: you will die at 8 o'clock in the morning. Your heart will stop at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so he, in the novel or the short story, he exposes them, but the war begins. But he dies as soon as the clock strikes 8 because he's still so susceptible to their powers of suggestion. So that hypnotic trance kills him in the novel. Here, he gets gunned down by the corrupt cops. But everyone, like you said, they're now exposed, they're now vulnerable, and the war for the planet begins. And that's kind of where Carpenter leaves it at the film. So back to you.
Yeah. And of course, the question then lies is what happens after this, order out of chaos or what, It's an interesting ending, that one, because you think, well, okay, he's won, he's got that transmitter, he's disabled it completely, everyone now can see who's running the show, so what happens next? And I think we're kind of moving into that period now where people are waking up and beginning to see who these people are. They might see them as like aliens or whatever, but they see them as pretty bad people. And it's like, well, what do we do next and how do we approach it next? And so, yeah, interesting times ahead for all of us. So, and I think another major theme about it is the role again of the media in all of this. It was the media pumping out this everywhere, the advertising everywhere, TV's on everywhere, pushing out this subliminal messaging, which is what we get to this very day. It's a lot worse now than it was back in the 80s, that's for sure. And as you say, we don't have a small little TV in the room like we used to have back in the 80s. It's a big, large, flat screen thing which takes up half the wall in your home. And are those things watching you? Are they hearing you, what you're saying? You don't know. But I remember one of the big things that I did in my early days of waking up was I got rid of my TV, and I have to say it was one of the best things I've ever done. Not that I was a big TV watcher, but I used to watch it quite a bit, just to follow stuff and whatever. But I was never glued to it. But just to get that out of there, get that, what's called the small hat in the living room. I got him out. I evicted him, and into the dump he went. And I have to say, that's why, I haven't fallen prey to a lot of this nonsense that's going on now, because I can I can see clearly, if you will. And I think both of you guys know the same. I don't think either of you have a TV in your home, or you certainly don't watch it. You might watch the odd movie now and again, but you know, we don't watch the evening news and believe everything that they say, you know. And sadly, there's just so many people out there who do, to this day, believe everything that's been said on that little box in the living room. So yeah, it just shows you the power of the media. And again, in the last 4 years, we saw that 24/7 programming. That there's a deadly virus out there that's going to kill you all, and you got to do this, and this. And yes, you got to sacrifice your freedom, but it's for the greater good, for what they called it, the greater good, not for the greater good of humanity, really, for what we think what the greater good is, but what they think the greater good is. And what's happened, I'd say 80 to 90% of the world population stuck out their arms willingly to take a cocktail of poison in their arms, you know. So it was a kind of a success for them. It wasn't a complete success, but it was a success. And we still don't know what the collateral damage of that's going to be in the years to come. We were seeing it already with excess deaths and whatever, but where this is going to go, we just don't know right now. So we dodged a bullet there, guys. We dodged a serious bullet there, and there's more to come. I'm telling you, there's more to come in the next few years. So, but once we know that the media is basically full of shit and is lying to us, and the science, trust the science, that's a lot of nonsense now. We can't trust anything anymore. And we trust our own gut instinct, and we can see things for what they are. And okay, we mightn't be completely right, but we do have a very good idea, and I think that's the way we can weave our way through this and somehow get through the other side, and maybe hopefully bring a lot more people with us. So that's my take on it anyway. So okay, Btwixt, your final thoughts on the movie, and then also give it marks out of 10, and yeah, we'll give it a wrap then. And Blackbird as well, your thoughts as well. So Btwixt.
I'd give it maybe 6 out of 10. I still think it's a good film, but there are just so many parts of it that are drawn out. You mentioned the TVs there. I don't have a TV. And, you know, when we did that review of Wag the Dog, the protagonist, Breen, who creates the narratives, who weaves the narratives for the media, the PR guy, you know, when when things aren't going well, when there's a counter narrative to his narrative, he says, it's true, I saw it on TV. And I've heard of people who, you know, I would say a lot of it was after 9/11. I think 9/11 was the big wake up call. It was for me anyway. And I heard of people who, you know, watched TV religiously, day in, day out, and suddenly they just got so fed up of it that they brought the TV out to the back garden and they took to it with a sledgehammer. And there was a sort of ceremony about destroying the TV. It couldn't just be thrown into the rubbish. It couldn't just be dumped. It had to be broken into a million pieces. And I see here, the only time I see TVs now is when I go to a cafe or a bar. And unfortunately, there'll always be 2 or 3 TVs in a bar, big ones, and they'll always have the news on, or a football match, or you know, whatever modern twerking music. That's generally it. It seems to be, if you want to operate a cafe or bar, you have to have the TV on at all times. The volume has to be up to the last, so that if people want to have a conversation, they have to try and talk over that. Now, when I usually go alone. I go with a book. I just like the idea of going out for a coffee, even if the atmosphere isn't the best. I still like the idea of going out for a coffee, perhaps on the weekends, etc. In this movie as well, I forgot to mention that there is a scene when Nal is having his revelation, and correct me if I'm wrong, he looks at a traffic light, and the traffic light is actually speaking or something, and it's saying sleep, sleep, sleep. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm imagining that part. But yeah, it's if people haven't watched it, if you were like me up until 2 weeks ago and you only knew the memes and short little video clips of it, it's worth watching it from beginning to end and comparing it to things you've witnessed in the last number of years. And just to say as well before I go, thank you Brizer for presenting this. Thanks to Blackbird for coming on and giving his analysis. The links to their Twitters will be in the description of this video.
Okay, Blackbird, your final thoughts.
Great observations. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Thanks so much for having me on. I guess all factors considered, I would probably give this a 7, maybe an 8. On a good day, an 8, but maybe a 7. And it's interesting when you look at the timeline. In 1963, Ray Nelson writes 8 o'clock in the morning. 1986, the graphic novel Nada is published, and then that is where John Carpenter learned the story. 88, he releases the film They Live. Got okay reviews, nothing great at the box office. But then it kind of went dormant until after 9/11, and then the rise of the internet, it suddenly became a cult classic, and everybody, started saying, "Oh my God, this is an analogy for world Zionism. This is what they've done to us." And it's interesting, in 2017, John Carpenter, the horror master on Twitter and X, made a post. This is January 3rd, 2017. John Carpenter writes, "They Live is about yuppies and unrestrained capitalism. It has nothing to do with Jewish control of the world, which is slander and a lie." Right. So it's just kind of, John Carpenter, he knows where his bread is buttered from. He's all in that Hollywood scene. And so he's out there basically defending the aliens that are taking over the planet. So he's the collaborator that he was supposedly warning us about in 1988. So I thought that was an interesting little film noir twist there that, oh my God, the director sold out just like everybody else in the film, right? So, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this and look forward to our next one.
A bit like Kubrick, is he?
In what way?
Kubrick was kind of warning us as well, but he was part of the whole thing,
Right. Yeah, these are the Hollywood insiders that, they, tease you with, oh, these are the facts, these are the facts, this is the dark truth, but they are still loyal to that system. Because they know what will happen if they're disloyal. They will get, hunted down and totally discredited and disgraced, right?
I know, like Carpenter made it big in the 70s and the 80s, and in the 90s, after They Live, his career kind of went downhill a bit, I mean, he still put out some movies, but they weren't as big as the blockbusters he put out in the 80s, that's for sure.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting. But he's still around, so maybe he didn't go that far, that was probably like I've seen a few of you. I've seen Halloween. I've seen a few of the other ones, and they were good. I mean, they're not my type of movie, but they were, they were blockbusters for a reason. They slasher movies and whatever. But he did make a big name for himself in Hollywood, that's for sure. So for me, I'll give it about a 7 as well. I thought the acting was a bit clunky. It was a low budget movie. As it was $3 million or something like that, which is minuscule even back in 1988. The production, I think, was certainly not polished at all compared to Carpenter's previous movies. So, but definitely for people who have not seen this yet, and I'm sure most people who are listening to this review have seen it, but it's certainly, I'd recommend it to people to have a look at it and watch it and just see what's going on around them now, because there's lots of parallels right there. And you say that was 35, 36 years ago that movie was made, and it's still relevant today. So yeah, it's one of the good ones, that's for sure. And I enjoyed it, and it's one that, you know, will stick with me. I remember when I watched it first, it did make an impact, and I was like, holy moly, you know, this is interesting. And I also thought, again, you know, who are these people who are running the world? And, you know, we talk about the Jews kind of behind us. You know, was Carpenter hinting at that maybe? And I remember Btwixt, you said, like, when Nada was in the store and he overheard the two guys talking, and says, "Oh, why didn't I get a promotion?" And the other guy probably turned around and says, "Well, because I'm a Jew, you know, that's why I got promoted, you know, and you didn't, you know." So that's, you know, that's just the way it seems to be. And there's only a small amount of them, and when you put on the glasses, you can see them, you know, you can see them. So yeah, a very interesting film. Enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks guys for being a part of this. Thanks for inviting me on Btwixt, and yeah, I look forward to the next one. So take care, everybody. Till the next time. Bye now.